Okay. I'll kind of explain what all these things mean by exFAT. Then the other thing will be NTFS, and then we'll look at the XFS. So I will be kind of giving some more time into the NTFS and FAT. Okay. XFAT and XFS is something which like mostly XFS you will be kind of encountering in the Linux file system. In the Linux file system, in the latest Linux system, it actually support XFS. Okay. And in the Windows, for the Windows, you will be kind of encountering FAT file system and NTFS. So what I mean by that is if I go to this one, you see it's NTFS file system. It's NTFS. So what is file system basically? File system is kind of nothing but kind of it's a way by which the operating system keep tracks of like what all folders or files are, and it also is able to kind of let's say there in a drive that let's say there are multiple folders or multiple files, how those things will be presented to the user as a kind of folder. So let's say over here we see that, okay, when I clicked on this NTFS file system, this file system was an NTFS it was an NTFS format. And the thing is that this is what Windows operating system here, the FTK imager was knowing how to parse an NTFS file system. So this NTFS file system right now, the one that I have collected, what I have kind of selected, is just a binary. If you see that it's just a binary, lot of data inside this, and it's just a binary. But if we know how to parse this binary, this NTFS file system, because the signature is, you see, it started NTFS. So there is specific algorithms or coding, let's say, which Windows operating system knows or which this FTK imager knows about. Okay. And what you can do is that what the FTK imager is doing is that because it knows about those algorithms, it is able to parse this binary format, which is the NTFS file system, and showcase that to us in a folder structure. Okay. Otherwise, it would not be possible to kind of parse this this binary file. Okay. So because FTK imager was knowing, it actually was able to detect that it is an NTFS file system. Then what it did was that it was able to kind of parse that out because it has the exact algorithm and showcase the same thing, the same blurb of, let's say, binary data in a folder structure like this. Okay, in a folder structure like this. So in similar manner, there are multiple other file systems, and the file system work is basically to kind of parse the data, this data, the one that you are seeing right now, in a folder or file structure that we as a human can kind of understand. And also kind of it has a lot of other things like doing some error checking or keeping the data in a, let's say, securing the data just such that these things, let's say this data is not deleted, for an example, by mistake, or something is not getting overwritten. So there are a lot of things which NTFS file system also does for us. We'll look at that in further details, but I hope you got an idea what this and what file system basically means by. So it actually help us in kind of what to say, keep track of files or folder on a storage device. The storage device is this one, and NTFS file system, we can kind of parse this out and see the files and folder. So these are the most important ones that you will be kind of encountering as a SOC professional. So I'll just quickly go through that one by one. First in a very high level. So for the facts, this is something, it is quite old. We normally don't see it, but this FAT is something like is a format which is mostly supported by Windows operating system. Okay, and it is like not good one. Like for example, error checkings and all are not there in the FAT file system. So even like let's say you're encountering a FAT file system, and by mistake, let's say even like few of the binaries got changed, for an example, by mistake, that file system will become unreadable. The operating system will not be able to parse that in a secure format. Okay, so that's something like FAT file system is quite old. We'll look at that thing in much more detail going forward. Then there's something called XFAT. It is again kind of, I'll say, a version of the FAT, but it is something which is also supported by both Windows and Linux. So let's say you have a USB drive. Let's say you have a USB drive which is kind of fat formatted. So if you plug that USB drive on Windows, you can read and write from that file, right? You can read and write if you select that. If you plug that USB drive on the Windows laptop, because fat is something supported mostly by Windows. But if you plug that out, the same drive that is fat formatted in a Linux system, what you will see is that you will only be able to read from there. You will not be able to write to that folder, to that USB drive. Okay. So this is some basic difference that I think you guys might have already encountered. Okay. Now there is something called exFAT. It is something like similar version of FAT, but little bit more advanced. And thing is that it is supported by both Windows and Linux. So if there is any USB drive which is exFAT, for example, it will be read and write for both Windows and Linux. Okay, you can read and write from both of them. So now let's go to the NTFS quickly. NTFS is another file system which is Windows proprietary. And thing is that again, like if there's any USB drive which is NTFS formatted, you can only read and write from Windows, but not from Linux. In Linux, you need certain drivers. Basically, in Mac, you need certain driver to mount that NTFS for you. It is not that easy. Okay. XFS is something which is more at the end of the Linux system. And thing is that you'll be encountering a lot of, like, let's say you are doing a lot of Linux forensic investigation. So you'll be encountering this XFS file system multiple times. Okay. And there are certain issues with this. The first issue is that NCASE tool, the most like important tools like NCASE, Axiom, which are like highly licensed tools, they are not able to parse the XFS file for you. Okay. They will not. So if you give a XFS file, something to the, let's say NCASE, it will not be able to parse that XFS file as a folder structure for you. Okay. It doesn't support currently. Okay. So this is something you guys should know. I am not sure about the FTK imager. I need to check that, but I think it is able to do that. I think it is able to, FTK imager is able to parse the XFS file system. If I recall correctly, I was doing some practical on that previously. I think it is able to do that, but the costliest tool like NCASE and Axiom, they are not able to kind of parse the XFS file system. I don't know why they're not supporting. Maybe they'll do that in later versions, but right now they don't support. Okay, but it is something again kind of to know about, and it is very much difficult. Like the open source tool to parse this XFS file system is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So keep that in mind. Okay, and I have a different way to kind of, let's say whenever I'm doing any kind of Linux forensic investigation, and if it is XFS, I have a different way to kind of investigate that. What I basically do is that rather than kind of mounting the file system, I basically do most of the time a live forensic image. Okay. And in the live forensics, I just get all the list of files which are there and gather a lot of important information for that files, like what that file is, what the hashes of that file, let's say what the hash, are there any connection between this file and this file. So I have my own script which does that for the XFS file system. Whenever I see that, okay, I'm not able to parse the XFS file system appropriately. If I get time, maybe I'll kind of share that thing too. That is script, maybe little bit idea how you can do that. But for now, what we'll do is that we'll look at the FAT and NTFS file in a little bit more detail going forward. And then, so one important thing, guys, is that right now, being a SOC professional, and since we have multiple tools in place that actually take care for us how to parse the NTFS file system and all, we don't need to worry about, like, okay, and like, let's say even if we don't understand much about the FAT file system and NTFS file system, we don't need to worry about that, because at the end, what we want, we just want that, okay, there should be a software that parses the NTFS file system for us, and we do the investigation. That's it. Okay, that's it. We don't need to worry about much about, okay, what's the calculation, what's the algorithm that is running behind the NTFS file system, which make that blurb of binary showing up as a folder or file. Okay, we don't need to know about more of that part. So I'll be kind of